Welcome to Rick on Life, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. I'm your host, Rick Amitin, and this is where we like to talk about things that affect our daily lives. For the past few weeks, we have been discussing the subject of faith in the 21st century. And today, which is the first program that I'm airing on in 2018, I would like to offer a bit of commentary around the subject of faith in the 21st century. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here have gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that those honored dead, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have the new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Some people believe that the United States was and still is one big experiment, but I think of it as something much more than just some experiment. For me, I think of the United States as a home, a highly desirable home, where all of our citizens have equal opportunity, equal protection, and equal rights. We fall short on these ideals. From the very time of our founding until this very present day, we have had to contend with extreme forces whose ambitions are deeply rooted in the desire to gain power and unfair influence over other people. Some people see our present polarization as a battle between traditionalists and progressives. Others see any differing points of view as threatening to them personally and their cause, and something that must be eliminated. The lack of civility in our public discourse should provide insight into our personal limiting beliefs and our lust for control. All the trigger words, the safe spaces, and the forced vocabulary is a reflection of our misunderstanding of free speech rights and is forcing on us a downward spiral into inequality. I understand the nature of political correctness is intolerance. And it's a sad state of affairs that our institutions of higher learning have descended into such a low state of fragility. When not getting your way results in a perceived life-threatening condition of being offended, without any actual harm being present, the only progress that we can claim is in our imaginations. As a nation, we can't get to the real issues because we are too distracted by the games of insubordination. Any tyranny and authoritative structures that we face has only come into power by our willingness to ignore our Constitution and our corresponding founding documents that were put into place to prevent the kind of abuses that we're seeing across our nation. We've now been blessed with a corrupt political system, an elite ruling class, and an activist class that has convinced themselves that victimhood is the pinnacle of human achievement. But let's take a quick peek behind the curtain of the motivations that drive our most heralded social debates, and we will find that what is revealed there is an insidious hatred, a commitment to discrimination, and the illusion of superiority. Freedom is not, nor can it ever be, for a select few, not politically and not spiritually. There is too much at stake for us to continue down this path of delusion, where half-truths, partial truths, and lopsided intellect will, as it eats away at our foundation of the virtues that make our nation great. But we have the power to stop this downward spiral. Atheists of days past seem to have simply been concerned with policing the boundaries between church and state. But today, atheists want to mock God and make all people of faith feel like superstitious idiots. Women's rights began in earnest to level the playing field. But today, feminism is rooted in the hatred of men and includes masculine disposability. Social justice used to be the desire expressed by the majority to rectify all societal injustices. But today, the so-called social justice warriors have established a race to the bottom, where the one with the most perceived violations get the prize. It creates low expectations and a wounded mentality. Our political institutions began as the fairest, most inclusive, and the most protective of individual rights established in the history of the Western world. But today, it operates as a decrepit remnant of what used to be. Money and special interests have driven our country into unimaginable corruption that has resulted in massive losses of individual liberty. I'm a man of faith. I believe in God, not because I'm weak, superstitious, or even fearful of eternal damnation, but because I have seen what man does when he's left to his own devices. My humanity, my imperfections, my limitations make me aware that man is not the highest aspiration. I'm not in the dark. I understand the shortcomings, the self-righteousness, and the hypocrisy of many, if not all, religious movements. But I also understand the shortcomings, the self-righteousness, and the hypocrisy of many, if not all, social movements and political endeavors. And neither am I naive to think that I somehow landed on the one religious experience to be elevated above all others. It's been a journey for me, one that has been filled with transformations and hard acquired understanding. And as I continue with my life as a work in progress, I want to be wide awake to the need to keep reaching for the best within me. My faith does not allow for hateful attitudes, hate-filled speech, or hate-driven actions. Faith doesn't make me a pacifist, nor does it exempt me from the battle of ideas. I'm a man, just a man, moved by the human condition and convinced that how I exist in the world matters. Most of the arguments against faith, at least in part, are based on misrepresentations of the relationship between Jesus and human beings. And I'm watching as generations of young people have to deal with the greatest theft in recent history, if not in all of history, because they have been socially engineered away from the experience that faith provides. I don't want to stick my head in the sand. I have listened intently to the compelling ideas behind the case for removing God from our consciousness. I have weighed the arguments against the facts of my own reality, and I make a very conscious choice to stay the course of faith, because I have not met a man or a woman who's offered me anything better. I've also paid attention to people who have professed the exorcism of all vestiges of faith. But the absence of peace, the violent tendencies that I see every day, and the social wars being waged on individual rights and the exclusion of others have made me recommit myself to the possibility of a better world. As we step into 2018, my message is very simple. Faith is viable in the 21st century. Whatever is going on in your world, I encourage you to sprinkle a little love on it. And remember, we can all make a difference. We can all commit ourselves to a way of thinking, a way of being, a way of treating our world and the people in it from a noble, empathetic, and understanding platform. I used to think that everybody wanted pretty much the same thing. But today I see us as being so diced up. People fighting fiercely for little slivers of areas in the world and in our society that they want to control unaware of the fact that many of the things that we're promoting isn't moving us forward, it's actually moving us backwards. Because anytime you think somebody else doesn't have the right to exist, you need to check your thinking. We can continue the way that things are and see absolutely no change for the better, or we can actually decide that there is a better way to live in this country with people who think different, feel different, and act differently than we do. There's no way for us to live without judgment. There's no way for us to live without concluding some things are good and some things are not good, and some things are desirable and other things are undesirable. We're all going to have some of these things inside of us that we wish were different. And when we recognize that there's so much that we have no control over, it really affords us an opportunity to focus on the things that we can control. I can control how I am in the world. And so I'm convinced, because faith has been such an incredible force in my life, I can conclude that because faith has inspired me to live my best self. I've had shortcomings. I've had hypocrisy. I've had things as a part of my life that I've had to deal with, that I've had to overcome, that I've had to come to peace with. I'm the farthest thing from a perfect human being. But I don't think there is anything like a perfect human being. I don't think it's possible. But that doesn't allow me just to sit back and feel no responsibility to the larger society that I'm a part of. Understanding how individual liberty works, understanding how individual rights are the foundation of our country. When I see that rights are being eroded, when I see that liberty is being taken away, when I see how extensively the masses of our country are being manipulated, it moves me. It gives me cause for pause. It makes me want to reflect on who I am and how I relate to everyone around me. We can do better. It's within our power to do better. We're all operating at the level of understanding that we have. And so in all of our getting, maybe it's understanding that we need the most. To understand other people, how they think, how they see themselves and how they see other people. This will never make us perfect. We'll never get it right to the point that there's nothing else that needs improvement. But I'm convinced we can do better. I have a deep love for my country. I have a deep love for God. I have a deep love for the ideals that this country stands for. I'm moved by injustice. I'm moved by aspects of our community, our large community and society that is obviously dysfunctional, causing harm to others. I'm moved by all of that. We need to fight together, not against each other, to make our nation great. I'm interested to know not only how you think, but why you think the way that you do. How did you get to the position that you're at? But how are we going to have a dialogue if we won't talk to each other? How will we understand better if we won't talk to each other? And so I have high expectations for 2018, for myself, for my country, and for each of you. And so remember, whatever is going on in your world, just sprinkle a little love on it. I'm Rick Amitin, and I'll see you next time.